Martin Luther King had a dream of a time when the former slaves and sons of former slave owners could sit down at the table of brotherhood. The question today, I think, is, can we make that happen? Many of us fear that human population growth threatens our sustainability, threatens our prosperity, our freedoms, and peace, both for ourselves and the neighbors we love now and for all those yet to come. In the Mediterranean, for example, overpopulation appears to be behind 10 migrants on the average drowning every day. These people are floating on the Mediterranean. They look like us, they're dressed like us, they're looking for a better life. Some of us think that following 4 steps can be among our most effective ways of building sustainability toward Martin Luther King's beloved community. Number 1, we should work hard at reducing unplanned accidental conception rates that currently hover around 50%. According to Guttmacher and Brookings Institute, about 1 out of every 2 children are being conceived by people worldwide who readily admit they're not ready to be parents. 2, contraceptives should be made available to everybody who wants them without regard to their ability to pay. We need to reverse the Mexico City policies that today deny contraceptive aid to hundreds of millions of women who want that aid. Denial of that contraceptive aid often doubles abortion rates, as documented in one sub-Saharan Africa study. Number 3, pay-as-you-go economics should replace Ponzi-scheme economics. For just one example among many, Social Security benefits should be funded as incurred instead of making tomorrow's kids have to pay for today's benefits. And 4th, our numbers should be matched with our ability to support those numbers. In the 1970s, that's what the U.S. Commission on Population and America's Future was for, until that commission got killed in the run-up to the '72 election by Quaker-raised Richard Nixon. Nixon killed that commission on population and America's future because of pressure from population-aggressive religions. Nixon had previously strongly favored the commission, so he explained his pre-election change of heart in a letter that he wrote to Cardinal Cook that's discussed on page 457 of this book. What if our prosperity, our freedoms, and our peace throughout history have often been determined by this race between our numbers and our ability to support those numbers? Do you remember the poet's words, Emma Lazarus, inscribed inside the Statue of Liberty, that described European overpopulation? Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. That statue celebrated liberty at a time when Europe's population had outrun Europe's ability to feed, house, and support that population comfortably. And so, on several continents, guns, germs, and steel destroyed millions of Stone Age native people. First people, as Europe's unsupportable, homeless and tempest-tossed, flooded in below that lamp beside the golden door. My great-granddad, Stackelberg, came in the 1850s to escape wars in Germany. My great-great-great-great-granddad Adams came to avoid depression in the Yorkshire weaving mill. If our prosperity, freedom, and peace are often controlled by this race between our numbers and our ability to support those numbers, what does that tell us about dictators like Adolf Hitler? I want to share with you the words of Gertrude Knorr. She's a genocide scholar, and she wrote these words in a chilling book called Can It Happen Again? Chronicles of the Holocaust. She explains how Hitler's political party was elected into power after the 29 Depression. I'm quoting, "In 1929, the Depression struck Germany. In the hunger, despair, and chaos that it brought, Hitler at last found his chance. Germans began to listen to the promises and threats he vociferated daily. Where the Nazis had polled 810,000 votes in 1928, in the fall of 1930, they'd polled 6.5 million, increasing their seats in the Reichstag from 12 to 107. Numbers had outrun German ability to support their own people. Of course, it's hard for us to see that now when complex economics and politics gets in the way. But Knorr is blaming lower income Germanic voters, probably people like Mom and me, because our fears, our hungers, and our countless us versus them passions exploded when economic setbacks revealed this ugly truth. Our numbers have once again outrun our ability to support those numbers. Charles Darwin brought about a revolution in the life sciences, including medicine, with these words: "More individuals of each species are born than can possibly survive." So, overpopulation drives, I quote Darwin, "a frequent struggle for existence that naturally selects our physical characteristics as well as our emotional capacity to express hard passions against others we see as competitors." In other words, our animal nature, including both our loving passions and our harder passions capable of evil, have been shaped in us by what? By this race between our numbers and our ability to support those numbers. In the long run, our quality of life appears to be governed by a human population cycle. When our numbers outrun our ability to support those numbers, our quality of life fades in very predictable ways. Paradise in phase 1 degrades to phase 2, where Eden's fading. When we continue to ignore this race between our numbers and our ability to support our numbers, phase 2, Eden fading, worsens toward phase 3, oppression. Our continued blindness ultimately leads to phase 4, apocalypse. You and I have heard of these kinds of phases before, haven't we? Not just from Darwin, but from Genesis. It's in Revelations. It's in many of the different stories at the foundation of religions from around the world. Does this population cycle have everything to do with our faith? Let's use the simplest definition of humanitarian as meaning we live to help each other, right? Can I see a show of hands on this one? How many of us believe that we should try to love one another as much as we love ourselves? That's the goal of the Jewish Bible, Leviticus 19:18, right? Golden ruled patriarchs like Abram and Joseph worked hard at deliberately loving others, even strangers, at treating others the way we would want to be treated. Darwin studied science for this reason, to help all of us understand and avoid harsh consequences of our animal passions, including especially our worst fears, hungers, greed, and other us versus them urges. It seems obvious to some of us that Darwin saw the world much as golden-ruled patriarchs did. To me, Darwin and the patriarchs seem like BFFs, best friends forever, as closely matched as diamonds in a ring. As numbers outrun our ability to support those numbers, could that weaken us? Could that distract us in our efforts to live our humanitarian, golden-ruled lives? Lives called for by the many differently worded golden rules that have been scattered by the light of care among so many different world religions. Friends, this is the biggest question that we've approached this morning. If I'm starving and I have no idea where I and my family can sleep tonight, does anyone think it will be easier for me to be humanitarian and loving toward others who may have the food and shelter that I want for my family? If we had time with you, I would share with you an Islamic golden rule, a Buddhist golden rule, and a Christian golden rule guide, all for care for strangers' behavior. And you could judge for yourself whether ignoring the race between our numbers and our ability to support our numbers will make it harder to live the kinds of lives that our faiths represent. So, how are our many world religions doing at building justice, at building beloved community, by preventing our numbers from racing ahead of our ability to support those numbers? The demographer Eric Kaufman wrote this book, Shall the Religious Inherit the Earth? Eric shows us that the fastest growing religions aren't necessarily UUs or Quakers teaching humanitarian, love your neighbor life ways. Faster growth is more often being achieved among some Christians, among some Jews, some Muslims, and some Far Eastern religions by deliberate policies that favor high fertility rate, population aggression. Do you remember Howard Phillips and the Southern Baptist clergyman Jerry Falwell, who organized together the Moral Majority, the first Christian right political coalition? Well, Kaufman argues in this book that since 1901, conservative fundamentalist Protestants have enjoyed a fertility rate one child per mother higher than moderate Protestants like some of us. He says that's what brought us today's Christian right. Howard Phillips' son is the pastor Doug Phillips, and he preaches a 200-year plan for fundamentalist domination of U.S. politics. Philip's Vision Forum online calls for a fertility high enough, compounded through the years, so that his church can outcompete more caring, more self-controlled, more humanitarian, more golden ruled traditions within 2 centuries. Friends, in Israel, population aggression is already changing politics. Haredi Jews, these are folks who came from Eastern Europe in recent years, have world-changing fertility rates. Today, I'm quoting Kaufman, just 2% of all Israelis over the age of 8 are Haredi, but under the age of 10, the figure is over 16%. By 2050, secularists will dip below 50% of Israel's Jews, and the Haredim, he says, will be poised to form an outright majority, raising the specter of theocracy, which is an option that's favored by the Haredim. Fertility rates amount to population aggression in parts of the Muslim world as well. In 2005, when Mahmoud Ahmadinejad became Iran's president, he ended family planning and he promised payments of about $1,000 from the state for every Iranian child born, plus per child stipend paid to the parents every year. Why? These are his words. I quote, "If our population increases, we will triumph over them." He meant people of the West. About Palestinians in the Gaza, Kaufman writes, "This Hamas bastion and stronghold of the Islamist-inspired Second Intifada is pro-natalist, with its politicians, journalists, and poets singing their praises of their," now he's quoting, "demographic weapon." Let's go back to Andy's symbol of evil, Adolf Hitler. Can anyone tell us about the Nazi Mother's Iron Cross medals that were issued in bronze, silver, and gold? Any recollection? Or? Well, the bronze was a Mother's Iron Cross that Mother would get if she brought 4 to 5 children into the world for the Third Reich. The silver was for 6 or 7 kids. The gold was for 8, 9 or more. So this isn't something that's new. As we come down toward our conclusion and to open discussion, some of us see sustainability today as everything that abolition has been in past centuries and more. That's because only sustainability can hold back the inequality that economists like Piketty and others are saying is growing all over our world and bringing with it, in too many places, renewed slavery. For prosperity, freedom, and peace for ourselves and all children yet to come, should we balance our numbers with our ability to support all of us? Should all women who want contraception care have access without regard to their ability to pay? Should we eliminate Ponzi-scheme economics in favor of sustainable, pay-as-you-go economics? And should we take to the streets, if we must, in favor of commissions on population and our world's future to begin very carefully shrinking this root cause of so many symptoms that yield so much suffering? Might we follow the light of care to remake our world so that only the best of life's blessings can be passed to tomorrow's neighbors of every race, color, and kind?
It's a tough thing to talk about. It really is, and you've done a fantastic job.
You should have talked up your book more.
Thank you so much